We can now discuss lifecycle methods. To avoid any confusion, I'll talk about the two main and most used lifecycle methods, but you should know there are 6 or 7 total lifecycle methods depending on which version of React you're using. However, the other lifecycle methods are used so rarely that you're better off not learning them to avoid any confusion. We will discuss only the component did mount and component will unmount methods. Luckily, these two methods are also the easiest and simplest to understand. I didn't know this beforehand, but even on the official React docs under the lifecycle section, only these two lifecycle methods are even mentioned. The other lifecycle methods are never even brought up in the official React docs. So again, I only noticed this after recording this lecture. So this really reinforces that you really are better off just learning these two lifecycle methods. Let's begin with an overview of the React component lifecycle first. The very first part of the lifecycle is called the mounting phase, and your immediate question would be, what is mounting what? Remember that if we go back to the diagram we saw earlier in the section, we saw that React is built on a virtual DOM, and that virtual DOM sits on top of the real browser DOM. And by comparing the changes with the virtual DOM, the real DOM is able to update the UI. So in essence, the React virtual DOM is mounting the real browser DOM. In a React class-based component, the very first thing that's called is a constructor method. The constructor method initializes functions, variables, and the component state. And next, the render method is called. If successful, our next lifecycle method is the component did mount method. And this is the first lifecycle method we'll discuss. This method is simply saying the virtual DOM of the component successfully mounted the real DOM. This is basically the method where you want to put functions you want to call immediately when the component is rendered. After that, you have async operations such as database API calls. Finally is the component will unmount method, and it's called last. And this is basically saying the component is unmounted from the real browser DOM. To put component did mount another way, you will use this method to perform an action that you want to happen automatically right when the UI appears without the user having to manually do anything. The most obvious use case for this is an API GET request for maybe retrieving a bunch of blog posts for a forum. When you visit your favorite blog, you don't click on a button to have the post retrieved from the database and displayed on your screen. This all happens automatically, and this is the main purpose of the component did mount method. I've personally used this method constantly in development and production code. So basically, the component did mount method is used when you want to have something happen automatically when the user visits a page, or you can say renders a component. Also, something to note that after the mounting phase, there is an update phase. There are lifecycle methods for this phase, but you can easily achieve the same outcome with state and conditional methods. And again, the last phase is the unmount, when the component is basically going away. I personally rarely use this method simply because I never had a reason to. Really, if you think about it, anything you would want happen here can be more easily done in the component did mount method of the next component. A couple of use cases I could think of would be maybe an outro transition or an animation of a component, and also maybe updating state because maybe it's important that the user is no longer on this page. This is just an overview. We will use these methods in code in the React router section.